Bigger than capes.
Give me some of that
I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. This week is a special episode where I'll be joined by Joe Glass, the creator of The Pride, Glitter Vipers, and Acceptable Losses. Joe, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you again for having me.
It's always good to have you. I think we've talked 3 times now.
It feels like it.
It's always an excuse to talk to Joe Glass. And this excuse is another Kickstarter, which is for The Miracles.
Yes, The Miracles. Very, very excited to finally have this on Kickstarter. It's a story I have wanted to tell for absolute years. I mean, literally as long as I've been doing The Pride, so my entire career in comics to date. And it's finally got to a point where it felt time and ready to do, because it was something which I felt just needs that little extra focus in terms of format and figuring out how the story was going to work and finding the right team to really tell it with me. And we finally got to that point where, it finally feels time for The Miracles.
That's good to hear. I feel like you've mentioned it to me on one of the previous podcasts we've done.
I think so. I think maybe it came up the last time when we were talking Glitter Vipers. I think I maybe was teasing it back then.
Yeah, I think you were. So it's at least it's consistent and it's coming to fruition now.
In for like fans of me who like really pay attention to the nitty gritty, I've technically been teasing it for even longer because I had a new banner at Fort Bubble in 2019.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, so I had a Joe Glass banner because usually I just have The Pride because that was the only book I had at the time. But for the upcoming year, I was planning on having like a few new books coming out. So, and then obviously 2020 happened. But yeah, like the idea was I'd do a Joe Glass banner, which will hint at all the things, and there's characters all over it, which are from various books. So not just The Pride, there's also the lead character of Acceptable Losses is on the banner. And there are 4 mysterious characters mixed in there who no one really noticed. And I like made a purpose point of not pointing it out and just be like, anyone who's paying attention. But yeah, those were actually the characters of The Miracles. So they actually have been teased for at least now 2 years. So we're finally at a point now where we're just like, yeah, this book's actually coming together now. We're actually making it, we're Kickstartering it, and it's starting off really well so far. So it's been going good.
All sounds good to me. So what is your, brief elevator pitch for The Miracles? Oh, not brief. You've got as long as you want, really. Just go for it.
That's good because I'm a waffler, so that could happen. So The Miracles is basically about family secrets when it boils down to it. And the sort of basic elevator pitch of it is like Elliot Morgan is your average teenage geek who loves comic books, and then he's shocked to discover that he has superpowers of his own. And before you know it, he's confronted by his favorite comic book characters in the real world. And before he can even get over the shock of what the heck are they doing there, he gets another revelation that they're actually his parents. And that they've all actually been characters from his favorite comic book and have been escaped to the real world when Elliot was just a baby. So yeah, The Miracles is about the family secret laid bare and how the family, each of them, winds up sort of dealing with their new status quo, having with everyone sort of on the same page now. Except maybe they're not on the same page. Maybe there's more skeletons in the closet. Maybe everyone's keeping their own secrets. And yeah, it's kind of dealing with that. There's more to it, and there is definitely a villain in the book that we've not revealed. It's a big secret, and I'm not going to say much more than that actually about that. It's just a big secret to anyone who's been thinking that it's that's kind of vague so far, and they were like, oh well, where's the baddie? It's just like, there's a baddie, but like that is kind of a surprise surprise and a shock to everything. So if you like surprising stories and shocks and spoilerific content, then the book is going to be that kind of book. I did like actually Kieran Gillen's newsletter this week, because bless him, he did a little shout out for the Kickstarter. Cool. And he said it was my most meta sounding story to date, which he thought was really interesting. And he's actually entirely right. It's actually very meta in some ways. And I'm sure some people are going like, well, duh, you just said they're comic book characters who escaped to the real world. It's like, there is more to it. So, because I'm a big believer, actually, what Kieran says about a good first issue is that you, in the lead up, particularly like in corporate comics, you've got the lead up, you kind of have to tell people what the twist is or the hook of the book. But so a real good first issue reveals more to that hook to really surprise people. So I'll say that The Miracles has that. There is more to the story than we're revealing, and more than we will reveal, because at the end of the day, I want people to read it and be surprised. So yeah, that's the general elevator pitch. That's a sort of broader than ballpark of the idea, without giving too much away. And then obviously there's like loads of minutiae which can be gone through as well. But yeah, that's kind of where The Miracles is at.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. I think it's a good premise. I think there are kind of similar things we've seen recently. I know in one of your YouTube videos you did mention crossover.
Yeah.
And for me, when I read the premise, it was kind of crossover and then Meet the Skrulls as well. I feel like has a little bit of a similar kind of vibe.
That's actually a good one. And you know what? When I never actually thought of it, I'm just like, actually, that's a really good one. It does kind of have that. The funny thing was when Donnie and the team started talking about crossover, and started revealing a bit more about it, I think it was around the time, like, there was just the tease of a name for ages, and I was just like, I immediately kind of had an inkling, and I was just like, wait a minute. And then the actual reveal came out about like, oh, it's going to be a story about comic book characters coming to the real world, blah, blah, blah. And I immediately slid into Donnie's DMs and was just like, dude, I'm actually doing this story. I'm just like, this is what it's about. Please tell me it's not what you're doing. And there are similarities. So I would say, but if you're a fan of what Donnie's been doing in crossover, you're going to love The Miracles. Yeah. We take very different routes. And I'd say that we're not telling the same story. Donnie's is much more, I feel so far, having obviously just read the first 3 issues, a story about what these stories of comics and fiction and things like that mean to us, and how they affect us in a way. The Miracles isn't really about that. The Miracles is much more on its focus of family, and also like there's kind of a refugee metaphor in there. So like there's similar routes that we're going, but we're going to very different destinations. And I was relieved to find that out when I spoke to Tommy. He gave me a little bit of an idea about where he was going. I was just like, thank God. But yeah, I would say, however, despite that, anyone who has read those first 3 issues of crossover, or has been interested, or is making the foolish mistake of wait for trade, because you should never wait for trade with a book like crossover, you're gonna love The Miracles, and you should really back The Miracles. Just because, if you love that book, you're gonna love this.
That sounds completely fair to me, and I like crossover. I've backed The Miracles, so I guess I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah, you definitely made all the right moves.
But yeah, that was something that immediately on the premise did hit me, and I'm glad that you're going in different directions with the same initial premise. With that in mind, what was the inspiration behind The Miracles?
Like I say, The Miracles is actually a story that's been in my mind for as long as I've been doing The Pride. And anyone who's like ever heard me talk about The Pride before knows that although the book's been maybe coming out for like 10 years now, I was coming up with ideas and thinking about the characters and writing scenes for The Pride like back when I was 15 years old. So like, 20 years now, Jesus. But yeah, The Miracles has kind of been there that whole time as well. And like one of the things I always found, like when I was a teenager, kind of I was absolutely in love with and enamored with obviously superhero stories, and you always have that fantasy of like, oh, what if I was a superhero? What if like really like someone's going to come round and they'll reveal this big secret and it turns out I get to be that kind of character in real life, and just have your world changed in that way. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think a lot of kids and teenagers have moments where they just kind of want that to happen. It's like the long lost prince syndrome in a way, like where you kind of feel like I want someone to come in and tell me that everything I've thought about my life is wrong. I'm actually super special. And I think people can relate to that. And that was kind of where the starts of what became the Miracles came from. I think like when I first started the book, I was calling it Wonder Boy, and then I was like, dude, you get sued. So yeah, it was like way back then. That's kind of how it began. And then as the Pride sort of got attention and was becoming like a big focus, I realized that the Pride is a team book about superheroes, but it's not really a family book. Like, it's family friendly in terms of content, but it's not about family. So I was like, here's an aspect of life which I've not told yet, and which I've not sort of had an angle on, which the Miracles then became the vehicle to do that. And more than that, there's also the fact that I've also not really in the Pride much touched on the family idea in queer perspectives as well. And anyone who obviously knows me knows that anything I write is going to have queer perspectives in there somewhere. The Miracles is probably the first story which I'm releasing, which it's not the main thing. It's like, whereas like Glitter Vipers, no, actually thinking about Acceptable Losses didn't really make the LGBT thing like a main thing. So this is kind of similar in that respect. Like, there's a definite thread of queer perspective in there, and there are going to be LGBTQ characters in the book, because obviously, but it's not the main thing in the way that it is in the Pride and Glitter Vipers. It's still centering LGBTQ characters though, so people who love the stuff I do because of that focus on LGBTQ people aren't going to be let down, but it's still going to have that. But I think it's possibly more accessible to those who don't look for that kind of thing, who are just looking for a great superhero story, a great bit of action drama, or even just like people who like soap operas, like people who like things like The OC and Riverdale and The Americans. I think they would love this. So it's just kind of a bit more broader appeal, I think, than my previous work.
I think that's cool. It is something that I've noticed ever since Acceptable Losses, that you do seem to be trying to branch out and reach to different audiences and show just how much you can do, I suppose. Yeah, there's an element of wanting to branch out and reach different audiences, as you say. There's also the fact that I don't want to turn to the audiences that I have and that have supported me and got me to where I am now and be like, right, I'm leaving you behind now. I'm still supporting them too, but like, I just want to let people, I don't want people to, well, no, it's not that I don't want it. I was going to say, like, I don't want people to pigeonhole me as like, oh, that's just that gay comics writer who just does the gay comics. And when they use it, obviously using gay as the umbrella definition. Whereas like, part of me is like, no, I kind of don't want that, because I do tell stories which I think anyone can relate to. I would argue for Pride, although like the main thing of the Pride is that it's LGBTQ superheroes, it is accessible to anyone. The way I've written it, like, you don't have to be queer to understand the Pride, to even get the situations which they're going through, or even when it is a gay issue, but it's not a gay issue, to totally relate to it. But anyway, there is also another part of me which absolutely loves being like that gay writer who writes the gay comics. I'm just like, yeah, I am. That's why I call my little imprint Queer Comics, because they will always be there. Because for me, that was the biggest thing I thought comics was failing at growing up. There was not that representation. I didn't feel like I could see myself in the things which I loved. So I got to a stage where I'm just like, well, I'm just going to do it myself. And there have been, 80 years now of comics or more. I've only really been doing this for 10. And like, I've only got
a total of around 20 books out under my name. So yeah, I'm not going to stop yet. I haven't redressed the balance yet. So everything I do will have queer characters and will have queer stories and will have a queer perspective. But there may be stuff which I do which has a broader perspective as well. And I think Acceptable Losses was definitely one, because it was much more about politics and about things like the war on terror and things which anyone who watches the news can relate to. And The Miracles is much more about family and about the way we keep secrets from each other, and whether that is damaging, whether that actually creates barriers between us and the people we love, and kind of how that affects each other, particularly in a family situation. So as well as the general family secret of, they're secretly superheroes from a comic book and they've escaped to the real world during a great catastrophe, there's also the element that each of them kind of has their own secrets and things they're not telling each other. And the reasons for the reasons for that are multitudinous, but also kind of come down to one thing, and that's that idea that you think you're protecting someone, whether it be you think you're protecting your family or whether you think you're protecting yourself. I kind of will be touching on that a little bit. So yeah, one of the other main things of The Miracles is just this idea of secrets themselves, and like, are they good? Are they bad? And just kind of really sort of looking at that. And again, I just waffled my way around to a whole new topic bit, so I just...
That's all right. That,
just the way I work.
Waffling from one topic to another. That's... the name of the Joe Glass autobiography, I'm sure.
Yeah, waffling around.
So, you're on Kickstarter again, as we've acknowledged, and you have been for every project except for Pride Season 2, I believe.
Yeah, so far, I would say, yeah, in a way, because obviously the Pride was weird in the sense that the Pride, obviously, I initially was doing myself. Obviously, a lot of my audience knows the Pride from the initial hardcover Kickstarter, which I did 5 or so years ago, whatever it is now. But obviously, by that point, I'd actually done both single issues. That series had 6 issues, and then 3 issues of the Pride Adventure series, which wound up in there, and then we did like a 4th for the book, etc. So like, those single issues have been done for years, and they were paid pretty much almost entirely out of pocket by myself. Which is why I don't have any savings now. But yeah, it was kind of that thing. And then we did the Kickstarter for the hardcover, and that's when people really sort of started noticing the Pride. And then everything else since has been Kickstarter, because it's the best way for me to make books. Like, it's the great field leveler for me. It's Kickstarter, because, and it's why I'm concerned when I see things like, massive corporations who have budget behind them throwing themselves out on Kickstarter, because it worries me, because I'm just like, well, you don't need that. Like, I do. Like, I cannot make comic books if I don't use this. And I cannot imagine not being able to make comic books. And as much as everyone can say, like, there are other options and you can save money, it's just like, yeah, you try saving money on a working class kind of job scale in the market out there today. It's just like, it can be tough. And it's one thing, and particularly in a year where there've been no Comic Cons. Like, my income was like drastically affected by that. So for me, it was got to a point, because I wanted to launch The Miracles actually last year. But like, we did Glitter Vipers, and Glitter Vipers paid for itself and paid for its postage, more or less. Not entirely. I did have to pay for some of the postage myself. So it like didn't. It became a point where I could not do The Miracles in 2020. And obviously, my worry was, of course, having 2 books, one of which was going to be a pretty big ask as well, financially, in the same year. So that's where we sort of went push back, and we were like, you know what, we'll do it 2021, start a year fresh, and break in that way. But yeah, Kickstarter is something which is a platform I love, but it's also one which is entirely necessary for me and also for independent creators all over, and particularly when they're coming from backgrounds where ideas of just saving a bit of money, or having a small loan from the bank of mum and dad of like £3,000 or something is not an option. So like Kickstarter is a necessity in that sense, and I'm glad that it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that we can use that, and yeah, hopefully we'll get this one funded and we'll get this one made, and yeah, there'll probably be more books from Kickstarter down the line.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I kind of already got in my head what I think the next one would be. So yeah, there probably will be more Kickstarter books down the line from me as well. But yeah, Pride Season 2, obviously, that was the only one which wasn't ever on Kickstarter. Because Comixology came around, they took Pride, decided to make it the first Comixology Submit title to graduate, as it were, to Comixology Originals. And yeah, they basically paid for me to make a whole second season to that series, and hopefully we'll do more in the future. I think for that one, a lot of it is going to sit on how well the Pride Omnibus does, which is coming out in June. Pride Omnibus being obviously the collection of all the Pride to date. So there'll be the Pride Season 1, Pride Adventure Season 1, and also Pride Season 2, which will be the first time it's ever been done in print. Yeah. Coming out through Dark Horse Comics, who obviously do all the print runs for Comixology Originals this June, and is available for order now. So anyone who has liked the Pride or likes anything I've ever written and would like to see more, please go to your local comic book shop and ask them to order the Pride by the bucket load, ideally. I would love to have one of those news stories on the comics news sites. So just like, oh, this book got 20, 30, 50,000 pre-orders. Yes, please. But yeah, it's available now. And to be fair, the response to that's been really good as well. I did like a bit of a round robin around comic shops and just being like, it's coming out in Pride Month. It comes out in June, which is Pride Month, and it's called The Pride, and it's about queer superheroes. Like, this is the book you absolutely want in your window.
Very much so.
So I've been like, buy a few. And to be fair, the response has been great.
That's really good.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it's going to be fantastic. So
I know I used to work in Travelling Man, and there was always the problem of running out of the Pride and having to try and get more Pride, especially when it was in the single issues. So before you did the paperback Kickstarter, I know we had like random Pride and Pride Adventures issues. And
at least with the omnibus, that's not going to be a fear in the sense that like everything's in one place. It's already one great big easy chunky book. So
no missing issues, and that's what the world needs. So to go back to the Miracles, which is where we were meant to be all along. So you're working with a different creative team than you've worked with before for the Miracles on this. And the art samples and all the design work and everything that's gone up is all really cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sure Vince and Harry will be very happy to hear that.
Yeah, I think one of the character designs is Elliot, both in superhero costume and regular Elliot, and was just looking at the boots that he's wearing and thinking, those are some well-drawn boots. That's a lot of effort. Shoes don't normally get that much attention, and that's what I'm here for, apparently. I don't know. Didn't know that's who I was until a couple of days ago. But so working with a new creative team obviously has always got new interesting challenges and things like that. What is it that's brought you guys together for the Miracles?
It's kind of been interesting because, like I say, the Miracles has been long gestating, and over the course of the years that this story's been something which I've been working on, there's been all kinds of variations involved. So there's been me trying to work out like what format it should be. Like, I think it's gone everywhere from being a 3-issue miniseries to a 12-issue maxi to being a prose book, and like literally gone through pretty much everything. Before I finally was like, no, it's going to be an OGN. And like when we got to that time, that was when the team that I'm with now making it, so Vince, Harry, and Haas, all came together, and it finally felt like, oh right, we finally have it. This is finally the full thing, and finally the team. which is not to say that any of the artists who I've worked with before on it you weren't also delivering out of this world stuff. But it was all at times when I still didn't feel 100% that I had everything nailed down story-wise, and it just didn't quite feel fully there. Not that it wasn't right, just wasn't fully there. And then Vince came into my life, and like his artwork just blew me away, and it seemed to match so perfectly with what The Miracles was, because here was a story about a comic book world and a real world, and his artwork can so clearly define that. And he's like, one awesome thing, like, just to give you an idea of how well the relationship started working and how much he was getting the story and how much, like, it's just been working brilliantly. There's moments where sound effects appear in the artwork, and that was never in my script. I think I had the sound effects sometimes in there, but the idea was that they'd be lettered. But then he came around and just thought, like, I thought that we could maybe draw them in, and then maybe we should draw them in like when Elliot's doing something superhuman and like super heroic. And it was because, like, because that kind of works at a meta level, because he's doing something he shouldn't be able to do being a real world person and in the real world. So it's like an aspect of his comic book world following him, kind of. And when he came up with that, I was just like, dude, like, that was when I really finally, like, nailed, just like, he gets this. He absolutely gets this. And so it's been perfect. And Harry's colors are fantastic. His work on Vagrant Queen was beautiful. So I knew I wanted to work with Harry. And Haas, I've just always kind of wanted to work with. Like, I met him in person, I think, about 3 years ago, maybe, for the first time. And by then, like, I already knew who he was, because, like, I heard of him and his insightful things in Panel by Panel and Strip Panel Naked. And I was like, this guy knows comics, and, like, he's really fascinating. And then I met him, and he turned out to be, like, the most down-to-earth, sorted dude I'd ever met. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? I really want to make a comic with this guy one day. So, the team kind of all came together. They were just all people who I either really wanted to work with, or just finally seemed to get where I was going with this story, in a way which just really made things sort of finally come together. And yeah, that's kind of where the magic of The Miracles really started happening.
Yeah. Sounds really cool. It's, like I say, it's a creative team I'm looking forward to seeing work together, and it's a book I'm looking forward to. That is largely all the questions I had for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add about The Miracles?
So it's obviously on Kickstarter now. It's a 30-day campaign, and we're about 2.5, maybe 3 days into it now at time of recording. So I think the final day of campaign is like March the 4th, I want to say. So like, please come back before then. In terms of what you can get for backing, obviously you'll get to read the story when it's all ready. But some of the things which I think will be of particular interest for people who really like gorgeous collectible books and things is there's actually a hardcover version, which will be Kickstarter exclusive. So you won't be able to find it in the shops. It's a very limited release. I think the print run is 500. So there's only going to be 500 hardcovers. Once they're gone, and you only be able to get them through the Kickstarter. So yeah, super necessary to get them. There's actually, for the first 100, a little early bird special where you actually get them about £10 cheaper. So yeah, if you want to get a hardcover particular, then yeah, jump in now. And just, because that's nice, thank you. And yeah, there's all kinds of other rewards. We're going to do like enamel pins, stickers. We're looking into other options as well. Particularly now we've had that cover by Kevin Wilder, which people are going absolutely apeshit over. So
it's a really good cover.
It's a piece. I mean, it's by Kevin Wilder, so like, what? Obviously, like, what can you say? So yeah, we might look into ways that we can make sure to get the most out of that Kevin Wilder cover for people. just that's kind of it. Like it's on there now. It ends beginning of March. Please come in and back now. Get all the goods. Get your juice. It's going to be amazing.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for joining me, Joe. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for having me again.
I'm sure we'll talk again very soon.
I did say.